From Mountain Home to Raft River, we've got all the District 4 analysis you'll need to know. This is the Magic Valley Prepcast with Scott Burton.
That's right. It's another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast from IdahoSports.com. Brandon Baney with Scott Burton. It's brought to you by the Idaho Division of Public Health. Scott, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, Brandon? I am doing fantastic. We are in the middle of district tournaments, and things couldn't be better.
That's right. If you're watching this on the video portion of the podcast, IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page, you'll see that Scott is wearing his finest Jerome soccer long-sleeved T-shirt. Looks good.
That's right, and they can be yours for the low, low price.
That's right.
Have your people contact my people. We'll make something happen.
For sure. I think most people that tune into the Prepcast know this, Scott, but if you don't, of course, Scott is also the athletic director at Jerome High School. And so he's very busy as Jerome's boys soccer team has a big matchup today.
Yeah, nice segue, Brandon. Boy, it's like you know what you're doing here. Yeah, we are in the throes of district tournament time, and today it's going to be Jerome and Canyon Ridge for the third time this year, with kickoff at 4:30 for the district championship in the Great Basin. And these two teams have played twice before, and twice before they have tied. So they have yet to beat each other, but they've yet to lose to each other. So it should be an interesting matchup, and it's at Jerome's home field. And like I said, kickoff at 4:30, so it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and as you're listening to this, the game will probably already be decided, and you'll probably know the outcome. But there's a good chance that both of those teams are going to find their way at state anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are two really good teams. I mean, Jerome, obviously the number one seed on paper is the top of the Great Basin. Haven't lost yet. I mean, they've got a few ties here and there, but they haven't lost. Their defense is astounding. They just don't allow a lot of goals. So if you're going to beat Jerome, then you better figure out a way to score, because Jerome just has not allowed a lot of goals this year.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, a couple of ties. Isn't that how it went with Wood River as well? They tied both times in the regular season and beat Wood River in the semis.
Yeah, exactly. And they shut out, they tied 0-0 both times in the regular season, and then they get to the tournament, and Jerome knocks them off and moves on to the district championship game today.
Yep. On the girls' side, Twin Falls girls continuing to look strong in Great Basin play.
I mean, Twin Falls, holy cow. It is Twin Falls and everybody else. I mean, that is just how dominant this Twin Falls girls soccer team has been. And, they're poised to make a really strong run into the state tournament. And they're playing Canyon Ridge, today for the district title there. And, that's the number one and number two seeds. And those two teams, Twin Falls and Canyon Ridge on the girls' side, they have been the top two teams, head and shoulders really above everybody else in that conference. So another great matchup for a district title this afternoon. That one kicking off, I believe, at 4:00 over in Twin.
Yep. And whoever loses these championship matchups, they're not out, right? There's
right.
Two bids available from District 4 and 4A soccer, both boys and girls. But you have to earn it the hard way, right? You got to take on whoever comes out of that consolation side of the bracket.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you want to look at the boys' side really quick, then, the boys' side, the loser of Jerome and Canyon Ridge will play Friday against the winner of Twin and I believe it's Wood River.
Yeah.
And then on the girls' side, the loser of Twin Falls and Canyon Ridge will play the winner of Mountain Home and Wood River. So, there's a second way to get to state if those championship games don't go well for one team. So, but it all will be decided this Friday.
Yes, it certainly will. Sort of a similar path for 3A soccer. If we look on the girls' side, Scott, it's been going according to chalk. You've got Kimberly, the top seed, Sun Valley Community School, the second seed. They're playing in the district championship match Thursday. And then you've got on the consolation side of the bracket, number 3 seed Wendell against number 4 seed Buell. The winner of that will play whoever doesn't win the district title, and 2 bids available in District 4 for 3A soccer as well. So where it's really been crazy, Scott, is on the girls or on the boys side for 3A District 4 soccer, because Kimberly all of a sudden is just on a Cinderella run. They came into boys districts as the number 6 seed. They beat Bliss in the first round 1-0. Then they beat Buell last night in overtime 3-2. So they've taken out the 3 seed and the 2 seed, and now they're playing top seeded Sun Valley Community School for the district title.
Oh yeah, I mean, whenever you get into any of these tournaments, I mean, you can, sometimes throw out the regular season because it's who gets hot, who's healthy, who's got a little swagger, and when you kind of knock off a couple of people that Kimberly has done, all of a sudden they're playing with a little bit of confidence, because you get into these, this grind of a season, and then you get to the tournament and you've just been beat up by the teams that you're going to play in the tournament. Sometimes in your mind, you're like, there's no way we can win this. We haven't done it before. But if you get hot, you get a win, you get a break, next thing you know, Big Mo's on your side, and Kimberly's got that. It'll be interesting to see how far they can go.
Yeah, so they'll take on Sun Valley Community School in the boys district title. That'll be a lot of fun to watch on Thursday. So that's kind of the soccer. By this time next week, Scott, we'll have the state brackets, and we'll be able to preview all the matchups and break down all the teams from District 4. It's going to be well represented at state, both boys and girls, though, I would say.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that.
Yep. All right, let's transition into football then. It was another busy week of action. I think the most surprising outcome had to be in the Great Basin Conference 4A football, Canyon Ridge getting their first win of the season, knocking out Mountain Home 36-18.
Yeah, I mean, this was a game that Canyon Ridge needed to win. I mean, every game is a need to win, but to get that first one is huge. I mean, you're talking about a group of kids. A lot of them haven't won a football game at Canyon Ridge since 7th grade. So, I mean, they're really, really trying to establish a culture over there that just has been lacking. In this particular game, they got up 16-0. Mountain Home kind of settled in, grinded it out, cut it back to a 1-score game. And then Wyatt Summers breaks off a 60-plus yard run for touchdown. It kind of broke it back open and swing the momentum. And, talking to Coach Poole this week, I mean, he's ecstatic that they finally kind of got off the snide a little bit. But, it's one of those things. When you're changing a culture, it's going to take some time. And, one thing that kind of fuels that Canyon Ridge team is that they've kind of adapted the mantra of winning the day. And you'll hear them say that. They'll talk about it. It's posted everywhere. And so what they try to do is they just try to win every drill, every team activity, every rep that they take. I mean, they are going to win that particular drill. So it's kind of a good mindset when you're trying to establish something, because they're breaking it up into very tiny pieces that they're just trying to win. And the kids bought into it over at Canyon Ridge. So they're getting a little better, but at the end of the day, winning breeds winning. And when you've got a winning program, you get bodies out. And when you get bodies out, then, you've got a chance to do some things. And so Canyon Ridge, hey, good for them. Huge win over Mountain Home.
Yeah, I've been so impressed with Coach Poole. I got to see him this summer at the Idaho All-State games, those 6th, 7th, 8th grade All-Star games. He coached one of the 8th grade All-Star teams, and so I got to see him actually interacting at practice with these players, and I was very impressed. I think Canyon Ridge is in good hands with Coach Poole, and it was really nice to see them finally break through and get a win. Mountain Home on the other side of the coin, Scott, they're kind of in a tailspin a little bit. Now, the Great Basin Conference gets 3 spots into the playoffs. We know Minico's there. We know Twin Falls is there. Right now, Mountain Home's still in possession of that 3rd spot with a 3-2 record in the conference. After that, you've got Burley, Jerome, and Wood River all 1-3. So, I mean, Mountain Home is going to probably finish 3-3, right? They have Twin Falls this week. That's their final conference game. Could one of these other teams, Burley, Jerome, Wood River, could they win out and take that spot? What's going to happen with this last spot?
You know what? I don't see it happening. I mean, even if you have Jerome that's got one conference win against Canyon Ridge, if they went out against Burley and then Wood River, for example, well, Mountain Home already beat them. So there goes that idea. And then Burley's the same way. Burley's going to, if they went out, you probably have their schedule right in front of you there.
Yeah.
But I think Mountain Home is locked into that 3rd spot. And so I think for them, it's just about preparing themselves to get better. And, they've, like you said, they've got a tough task with Twin Falls this week. But, funny thing is this morning I've been having some conversations about, and maybe this is something we can talk about next week or the week after, is the Max Preps rankings.
Yeah.
Because there is a whole lot of controversy brewing right now when it comes to these Max Preps rankings. And I think that's definitely a topic for discussion because it is really messing some things up right now.
Yeah, I know just from doing some of the other Prepcasts that we do in the other districts around the state, there's some wonkiness going on for sure. It's not a perfect system by any means. For example, as it relates to the Magic Valley, right now, Lighthouse Christian at 0-6 is ahead of several 1A D1 teams that have wins. And to me, when you have, it's not that Lighthouse Christian doesn't deserve to be that spot. They played a very tough schedule, but when you're 0-6 and you are ranked ahead of teams that have wins, there's something wrong with the formula, right?
It is. I mean, Minico's in the same boat. They're undefeated, yet they've got teams ranked ahead of them that, one, they've already beaten, and two, you just look at it on the eye test and there's just no way. But Max Preps runs a really weird system, and it's got a lot of people ticked off just because they run almost on a point spread type of situation. Here's the expected score, and you don't handle that, it hurts your rankings a little bit. Well, here we are trying to preach a little bit of sportsmanship and not running scores up, and now look what happened to Emmett and Middleton last week. Prime example. This Max Prep thing that the IHSA has kind of gotten themselves into a little bit, it's raising some eyebrows right now.
For sure. Let's do that next week, Scott. Let's really dedicate the majority of our time to breaking down, because I don't think anybody really knows how the formula is calculated. Certainly Max Preps is not going to tell you how it is calculated. I joked with somebody, it would be easier to find out what the 11 herbs and spices are in the KFC fried chicken bucket than it would be to figure out how these ratings work.
Yeah, no question about it. But like you said, if you don't know about this thing, there is, like you said, some wonkiness going on here, and it's not going to serve some teams very well.
Yep, for sure. So we'll dive into that deep next week. I agree with you, going back to our original point of the third team from the Great Basin. I think it is Mountain Home, because at this point, I think Burley probably is the third best team in the Great Basin Conference. Mm-hmm. But they had to play Mountain Home way back in the season opener, a conference game right out of the chutes, a game they lost 28-21. The game tying touchdown was dropped in the end zone. And unfortunately, because of that, Mountain Home, doesn't matter how they finish. Now, it's not going to be a very long stay in the postseason if they don't get some things figured out. But I do think Mountain Home pretty much has it locked up. So,
no, I think you're right. I mean, who would have thought that first game of the year was going to mean so much? And it certainly did. But the thing for Mountain Home is they're probably going to get that seed. And they have got to find a way to get healthy, because they are really thin and banged up right now. So, and I guess if you approach the next 2 weeks right, and knowing that, you're going into a Twin Falls game that you're probably not going to win, you don't really need to win. I mean, not that you don't want to go be competitive, but you got to protect your guys, and get ready to play in the postseason. So, it'll shake out a little bit more after this week, because we'll only have 1 week left, and we can kind of maybe start to see some writing on the wall. But for Mountain Home, hey, they grinded it out, and it looks like they will be that third seed.
Yep. Let's talk about the other two teams that are going to make the playoffs from the Great Basin. Minico, a 30-7 win over Jerome. Again, it's like the Max Preps ratings. It's not flashy. It's just, we're going to show up, we're going to play good defense, and we're going to run the ball and get a win.
Yeah, I mean, this was a game that was a lot closer than the score indicated. It was 10-7 at the half. And Jerome missed a field goal right at the gun to tie it up at 10 to go into the locker room, with Minico, in a game that Jerome pretty much dominated in that first half. They had a couple of turnovers that got them in that first half, but defensively they had shut down Minico, and then they were able to run the football on Minico as well. And when I talked to Coach McCaffrey this week, first thing he said was all the credit to the Jerome staff. They had a great plan, and it worked. But again, just like we talk about every week, when it comes to Jerome, they just don't have enough dudes. The guys they have are great, but they just can't sustain. And so it came up and got them again. For Minico, offensively, they came out of the second half and got a huge stop. It kind of woke them up, and then they got a big home run score, put them up 24-7. And then from that point on, it was really trying to play catch up. Bendelay, 18 carries, 115 yards, 2 scores. Joe Terry had a big game, 72 yards and a touchdown. Garza, 86 yards rushing and a touchdown, 33 yards receiving. So they got some players that stepped up, but defensively, they didn't tackle very well. It wasn't one of their best games defensively, even though they only gave up 7 points. They're going to have to do a little bit better job there. I mean, they dropped an interception. They had a couple of errors that kept drives alive. But they did come up with an interception and a fumble recovery. And so, I mean, they got enough plays to get it done. So, but, from Minico, they stay undefeated, and they are headed into a game with Wood River, which has got some questions around it because Wood River's banged up. And so stay tuned over the next couple of days what happens with Wood River and Minico.
Okay. Because we've seen this time of year, Valley last week had to forfeit a game. We've seen it over in the Treasure Valley as well. So you hate to see that this time of year, but it is something that happens, unfortunately. So I will say one more thing on Minico. It's interesting coming into the season. If you had asked me, we knew they were going to run the ball, right? I thought the 2 main guys that were going to be doing the running were going to be Brevin Trankel and Clayton Wilson. It's neither one of those guys now. It's Bendelay and Joseph Terry. So it's kind of interesting how they've been able to morph and adapt. And
and Minico has taken Brevin Trankel, and just really kind of put him on defense. Let him play linebacker because, I mean, he's got aspirations to play at the next level somewhere, wherever that is, but it's going to be on the defensive side of the football at the linebacker position, and that's where he's better served. And he still has the cast, the wrap on his hands, so it makes it tough to hold on to the ball. It's easier to tackle and run into people, and rather than kind of be a running back. I mean, granted, he's a kid that, one-handed or not, they could probably use him at running back. I mean, he's just a beast, but for him, he's playing a lot more defense.
Yeah, for sure. Twin Falls continues to look good. 48-12 win over Burley. They're 6-1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was the key to this game. Was all about turnovers. They won the turnover battle 6-2. I mean, 6 turnovers they forced, and they rushed the ball for almost 350 yards, and they did score on one of those turnovers. So Tegan Severe, 3rd game this year where he's had multiple interceptions, and that's pretty impressive when you think about it. I mean, you're talking about, 7 games, and almost half of those he's had at least 2 picks. I mean, think about that. That's incredible. Salazabal and Norlander each had over 100 yards rushing. So, offensively, Twin Falls is really got it going behind a really strong offensive line, which is going to be an interesting battle when Twin and Minico play in that final game of the season. But for Twin Falls, they're healthy. They're undefeated in conference, and it's all coming down to that final game with Minico.
That's right. That's a game we'll have for you on IdahoSports.com. I will be there for that game, Scott. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Fantastic. I can send you more text, try to throw you off your game a little. Yep,
for sure. So that's still 2 weeks away. But let's transition now to the 3A ranks. We talked about Filer had a really nice season. They still are. They're 4-3 now, taking on Gooding. And Gooding says, yeah, it's nice that you're having a nice little story, but we've got bigger aspirations, and we're going to win 58-0.
Wow. And boy, Gooding just took Filer out behind the woodshed. I mean, it was Filer 7 yards of net offense in that game, 25 carries, minus 9 yards. Defensively, Gooding is just finding their stride right now. They are just beasts, and they're getting it done. I mean, they were up 24-0 after the first quarter, and they were on cruise control, which is huge because they could rest some starters because they've got a short week. They play tomorrow night against Marsh Valley up in the Dome. And so, heading into this game with Filer, I mean, it couldn't have worked out any better for Gooding just to jump on them quickly, get some dudes some rest, and then that way they're fresh for a short week. And the big thing is this Marsh Valley team that they're going to play. I mean, this is a good team. They're not deep. They've got 3 losses on their record. And this has got the attention of Gooding. I mean, they're not taking anybody lightly. But these 3 losses that Marsh Valley has are to state champions. I mean, they lost to Beaver, Utah, West Side, Sugar, all state champions. And they were relatively close games, so Gooding's got them on their radar, and they're playing in the Dome, which is great because Gooding wants to simulate a playoff atmosphere, and Marsh Valley beats Snake last week. So, I mean, this Marsh Valley team is pretty good. And a fun little fact, Coach Anderson's never won in the Dome before. And so going up there is always kind of an interesting deal. And granted, those have always been semis and finals, playoff football, but still, Ophir in the Dome. Okay. And it's going to be in a little atmosphere there because you've got some people from Ann Arbor going to show up for Loveland, but they are really focused in on Marsh Valley because they think they're a pretty good football team.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun night at Holt Arena in Pocatello, where it's a doubleheader actually. And then the second game is Snake River American Falls, and Snake River is going to be fighting for their playoff lives in that game. So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that Gooding's going to be able to do is Marsh Valley. My prediction: Marsh Valley may keep it close early on, but they are so thin; they just are not deep. And when you look at film on these guys, it looks like they're playing maybe 12 to 15 guys total, where almost everybody is going both ways. And that is going to wear on you. And you get a physical pounding team like Gooding, that's going to wear on you a lot quicker than most. So, and I think Gooding is just going to wear them down eventually, whether that's late in the first half or start of the second half, if they don't run away with it early.
Yep, for sure. The other big matchup from the 3A SCIC last week was Kimberly taking on Wood River. Only allowed 8 points, which is great for a defense that's kind of been a little bit out of sorts this year, but only 22 points scored for an offense that's usually in the 30s or 40s. What do you make of this 22-8 win by Kimberly?
Well, it was only half a game because that got called because of lightning. They had some issues going on.
Okay.
And so, in that half, so basically what happened was Wood River's lost 6 in a row. They are now playing Kimberly. They got an early score, which was good for Wood River, but they had a lightning delay. And so they were waiting it out after the half. After a 30-minute delay, 15 minutes in, then another 30-minute clock started. So if you're not sure of how the lightning delay works, is if you see the lightning, you're on the clock for 30 minutes. And if in that 30 minutes there are no more lightning strikes, then you're able to take the field again. But let's say you go 25 minutes and you get a lightning strike, that 30-minute clock starts over again. So you could potentially just sit there during a lightning storm forever and ever. And it just looked like it wasn't going to let up. And so administrators from both schools and head coaches, and they just determined the lightning wasn't going to go anywhere. They checked with the IHSAA, and as long as officials and both coaches agree it could be called a complete game, that's what they did. So they ended it after one half. It was a complete game, went down as a win for Kimberly, 22-8.
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Times it by 2, 44-16. Now we get kind of what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, okay. That's why I wanted to talk about this game, and I knew you would have the answer for me. So that's why.
Absolutely. And and we've been talking about this Holman Chadwick kid from Kimberly too, and I just wanted to update for those that listen. On Monday, they were finally able to close him up and say that there were no more infections because he'd been battling, infections. And so they're hoping that he can get his strength back and go home in the next week or so. And so, the Kimberly community, the football team, they want to thank everybody that's been kind of listening to this, everybody that has, kept him in his prayers. He still has a battle ahead of him, but he was able to get through a rough stretch. So just wanted to update those, that kind of started to follow this story.
Yeah, if he could be home and in around the team ahead of that Gooding game in 2 weeks, I mean, That would be so awesome for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we're going to continue keeping our thoughts and prayers for him and his family, as well as he is fighting for sure. That's great news though, to hear that there's no infections. So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that's great. Well, let's take a break real quick. We'll come back and break down the rest of what happened in the football scene. We'll check in with Declo. We'll check in with some of those 1A programs, but we'll step aside real quick to hear from our sponsors, the Idaho Division of Public Health, here on the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
It's time to start planning for back to school. That's why I got my kids vaccinated for COVID-19. Kids 12 and older can get vaccinated. The vaccines have been researched and tested. They're safe and they work. And I hope everyone will choose to get vaccinated too.
Back on the Magic Valley Prepcast, IdahoSports.com. Brandon Baney with Scott Burton. As we transition now to the 2A ranks, the big matchup was a battle of top 5 teams. Declo taking on Nampa Christian. Tight game. The Hornets drop it, though, 28-20.
Yeah, this was a really good football game. For Nampa Christian, it was a huge win. They moved to 6-1 on the year, and it gave them some confidence that they feel that they can compete with anybody. A big turning point in the game was a key stop they got in the fourth quarter, and to put them in a position to tie the ball game early in the fourth quarter. They fumbled it late in that quarter, but they were able to get the ball back. It just became down to a 2-minute drill to win the game. And they had a couple of really good performances. Dane Bradshaw, 16 carries, 90 yards and a score. Also 7 catches, 93 yards, and 14 tackles on defense. That kid was all over the place. Landon Cheney, the quarterback, 306 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. They got some really good players. And it came down to the final play of the game where it was one of those almost – you remember the Fiesta Bowl where Boise State beat Oklahoma on that lateral at the end of regulation to tie it up and send it to overtime. And Declo was running something similar to that that kind of got people out of their seats just a little bit. But it came up short, and Nampa Christian got the win.
Interesting. Okay, now we could see a rematch of this in the playoffs in Declo again, because Declo will win their conference. Nampa Christian still has to play Melba. They may not win that and may have to be a road warrior because of that. So
yeah, you never know. I mean, when you've got a strong conference like Nampa Christian has, and they've got a couple of those really good teams in there, there's certain games that mean more than others in that conference. I mean, Declo didn't mean anything other than just kind of like a shot in the arm, a little confidence boost you got to get some momentum. But when it comes down to the numbers, Nampa Christian's got a big one in front of them for sure.
Yep, for sure. And again, just another Max Preps tangent. Despite losing to Nampa Christian, Declo is still ranked ahead of Nampa Christian in the Max Preps ratings. So.
Yeah, go figure. More stuff to talk about next week, isn't it?
Yep, for sure. So, all right, 1A D1 ranks. Oakley and Raft River are on this collision course. Raft River shuts out Murtaugh 50-0. Oakley shuts out Glens Ferry 64-0. I've said this a couple of times. Can we just fast forward to the part where these two play each other finally?
Yeah, no kidding. Oakley is just continuing to roll 64-0. But Glens Ferry, I mean, they're really struggling to score. The last 3 games, Glen Ferry's only scored 6 points. They are just struggling. Oakley averaging 55 points a game, giving up only 7. And that's a little misleading too, because in the opener, they gave up 34 to Lapwai. I mean, that's their curve buster right there. So, really, since that first game, it's almost like if you're Oakley, how do you get up for it? Because you're just walking out destroying everybody, and not that Oakley isn't good. Oakley is really good, but you kind of need that Raft River game for both Raft River and Oakley, because when you go into those playoffs, if you're untested, you haven't been in a close game, sometimes those kids tighten up a little bit. And so I think that's why that Oakley Raft River game, regardless of what happens, they're both going to make the playoffs, but I think it's going to be good for both of them just to be in a battle heading into the playoffs. Now for Raft River, they get a bye week. They get that week to prepare for Oakley. They shut out Murtaugh 50-0. Lowmiller, 127 yards, couple of scores, but a couple of cool stories out of Raft River. and I want to make sure I get these right. In that game, Benny Smith got a touchdown, and he's usually the second string guard for Raft River, right? But he's one of those kids that you tell him to do something, he'll go do it. Benny, go climb the flagpole. He's shimmied up that thing before you even know what happens. He's one of those kids. And he's not a starter, but he's played every position on the field with the exception of quarterback and kicker, is what they're telling me. And he's always willing to give good looks on the scout team, plays a few quarters of JV each week, so they put him in the backfield and they just gave him a simple dive and he busted it up the middle, bounced it for 35 yards and a touchdown. And everybody on the Raft River sidelines going nuts. But here's the cool thing. He ran into the end zone where the ambulance is parked, and both his parents are on the ambulance crew during the Raft River games. So here's the kid busting right up the middle, running right to mom and dad in the ambulance in the end zone. So kind of a cool little thing. And then another cool thing for Raft River is they kicked an extra point. Now that doesn't sound like much, but Ethan Southern kicked and made one extra point and one field goal, I should say. For 11-man teams, it's not a big deal, But I was talking to the coaching staff, and they're like, we've not ever seen an extra point kicked at a Raft River game ever since, even when I was a player. That just doesn't happen. That's maybe 18 years is what they're guessing the last time something like this has happened. And it sounds bizarre, but the 8-man game, they don't kick. They go for everything, and that's just the 8-man game. And so it was a really cool thing. And the field goal was from 22 yards away. And, Treg Whitaker, the holder, Rylan Evans, they were the snapper. They had been practicing all week for a few weeks, and they do it on their own time. They don't have any time set aside for practice to do this. So they were doing it on their own. And so last Thursday at the end of practice, they lined up and practiced a field goal. And the head coach said, hey, if you can make 3 in a row, we'll let you kick one Friday night. Well, they made 4 in a row. And so when the kicks went through on Friday night, the place went nuts again. And you would think it's just an extra point. It's just a field goal. But for Raft River and generally all 8-man teams, that stuff just doesn't happen. So a couple of cool stories coming out of Raft River.
Yeah, I love the two-way players at the 1A D1 level, where you talked about Lo Miller for Raft River, 127 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. You also had on defense 12 tackles, a sack, and 2 fumble recoveries. For Oakley, Dace Jones scored 4 touchdowns, including a kickoff return for a touchdown. Then on defense, all he does is have 17 tackles and a fumble recovery. So
that's awesome. And those are the guys that any 4A team would love to have on their squad, because they're just tough kids, and you just can't say enough about those small schools.
Yep, for sure. All right. So we have to wait another week for our big 1A D1 matchup, but for the 1A D2 ranks, Scott, it's here. Cary versus Castleford. Cary had a nice shutout victory over Camas County last week. I believe it was 58-0, and Castleford had the bye week. So it's almost mirroring what's going to happen with Raft River and Oakley, but this is going to be the big matchup Friday night in Cary on IdahoSports.com. I'm excited.
Yeah, this should be a really, really good game, and in that game against Camas for Cary, just a quick recap on that one. Cary, even though they finished with 58 points, they only had 8 points in that first quarter because Camas went on a 9-minute drive that ended at the 25-yard line. And for 8-man football to put on a 9-minute drive, I mean, that's craziness, and then the defense took over and basically Cary rolled from there. But a couple of cool things out of Cary. And, we talk about this in the coaching circles where a lot of times you're going to get teams that got talent, but do they have a culture? And it's funny how, and I'm headed up in November to talk to a group in Boise about developing culture, and it's just amazing what culture can do for you, and Cary's got some of that going on as well. I mean, one of the things that their coaching staff does is at the end of every practice, they select 2 players to deliver speeches to the team. Sometimes the topics are assigned, but mostly it's from the player's heart and about the upcoming game. and as part of their leadership program they do at Carey. It doesn't matter what grade they're in. Sometimes even junior high kids are going to get up and talk, and sometimes school managers. But what they do is they have this leadership program, and they get these kids to speak to the teams, and it develops a culture. And within cultures, you got to have fun. And so one of the things that they do up there is they let the kids do coaches impersonations. They do impressions of the coaches, and they say the kids are hilarious and their acting is spot on. And so if you get these things going within a program, all of a sudden you've got that little X factor, when it comes to winning football games, or basically winning anything for that matter. And Carey and a lot of these schools that we talk about have it going on.
Yeah, that's so cool. It's going to be really fun to watch Carey. I kind of view it this way. Carey's been through these big matchups before. These players have been through where the pressure's on. For Castleford, this is kind of uncharted water a little bit. How are they going to respond to, okay, the pressure is here. This is like Monday Night Football. Okay, everybody's watching you now. What are you going to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you get programs, even though the kids are kind of cycled through, you get programs that just have seen the big lights before. Others that are just starstruck. Now, that could go a couple of different ways. They could be psyching themselves out, and it could go the negative way, or they just could be just so loose because they don't know what to expect. But a lot of times you get the experience factor that plays a role in this stuff. And a lot of that's coaching staff as well. The kids are going to feed off their coaches, and if coaches have been there, they're going to know how to react. They're going to know how to keep their kids under control. So yeah, you're right. There is a huge experience factor here, and Carey definitely has it.
Yep, for sure. 7:00 Friday night, IdahoSports.com. Do not miss it. Castleford against Carey. It's going to be one of, if not the 8-man game of the year. All right, Scott. It'll be so much fun to hop on next week to talk about Max Preps and also state soccer. Let's plan on that. State soccer and Max Preps, and we'll kind of just take it from there. Because football, we kind of know at this point, right? We kind of know who's in.
We do. We do. Right. We have an idea. Volleyball's underway now. It starts this week. And so we can talk a little bit about volleyball and where that's stacking up. We'll have the state soccer brackets all set and ready to go. And like you said, I mean, we'll have some of these big games done, one on the way, a couple on the way. So yeah, we'll have a few things to talk about, but we're heading into I can't believe we're here. We're at the final end of fall sports, getting ready for state tournaments.
Yep, it is the best time of the year, no doubt about it. So, all right, good luck at the soccer match today. Good luck to your Dodgers as well in Game 5 against the San Francisco Giants. That's tomorrow night, right?
Yes, we are. 7:07, first pitch.
All right.
Dodger blue.
Sounds good.
Soccer.
Yep. Jerome Soccer, LA Dodgers, Scott Burton's got it all. Thanks for tuning in to the Magic Valley Prepcast. We'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.